Portions of the following program may have been pre-recorded.
The following program's views, claims, or ideas may not reflect those of WSRR Radio or StylesRebelRadio.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Behind Enemy Lines here on WSRR Radio, nationally local, meaning we play your local bands on a national stage. I'm Lucas Durazio. I'm joined by Dom Farrow today. Today we're doing another remote episode. By any means necessary, we get it done. We bring the content to you. Dom, York, PA native, back at home, back in York. How's it feeling in Eastern PA?
I mean, I wouldn't call it Eastern PA. I'd call it South
Middle
Central
East?
PA. Nah.
Are you the Middle Eastern?
I guess if you really want to get in the nitty gritty, but it's pretty much dead center of the state. But yeah, it's been an interesting couple months in Pennsylvania, and being in Pittsburgh, coming to South Central PA, especially during this hectic week of election week in this country, it's just very interesting. It's a very interesting state, Pennsylvania is.
That's right. We are recording on November 7th, Thursday, 2 days after the election. Election day was November 5th. I hope you got out and voted, be a part of your nation. This is admittedly the first time that I've ever voted. Is that bad? I'm 25. You think that's a bad thing?
I mean, what? You've only had, well, as far as presidents, you've only had one other election you could vote in, right?
I think two, right? When was the last one? Whatever.
2020.
2020. I
And then
obviously could have voted
2016.
for that one. 2016, yeah, no. All right, yeah, it's two.
So
Local elections, stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm a bad citizen.
I think you've had about four. I think this was the fourth election that we could have voted in, and this is only the second one that I voted for. So I don't really vote for the non-presidential elections.
Yeah, all that stuff that doesn't matter. I mean, it obviously does. That's a joke.
People are
Get out
like,
there and vote as much as you can.
people are like, vote for the local government. That's where you make the biggest difference. You got to start the local level. I'm like, I'm not doing all that.
It's too much research for you to do, right?
Yeah, I don't know enough about
Like,
these
I'm
guys.
not doing all that reading. I don't know who these guys are. I don't know who Connecticut Dave McCormick is.
On election day, I went to my polling place, and I've always heard, and like going to like poll elections, like I'd go with my dad and stuff. We'd wait in line for like an hour at least. I walk into this polling place, and I thought I was like in the wrong place because there was like nobody in there. Literally
That's exactly
nobody.
how I felt.
And I'm filling out my ballot, and all of a sudden, like I hear some people like arguing, and I look up, like I'm filling in, I pick the president, pick whatever. I look up, and these people are fighting each other, and
Like physical altercation?
no, more just like arguing because they're like older women. These are like the volunteers.
Oh, this is awesome.
These are the people who are like counting our votes and like
Oh, God.
making sure our elections have some integrity. But yeah, so they're fighting and stuff, and I look up, I'm like trying to like figure out what's going on. I never figured out really what the big issue was, but all of a sudden some other woman just starts praying.
Oh,
Like, please.
she dropped to
We
her
don't-
knees?
What?
Did
not
she
to her
drop
knees. She was like, please, we don't want to be fighting on this day. Please, dear Lord, please, not today.
Like it was a holy day.
Yeah.
Obviously a very important day, but it's not like it was like Christmas or like, oh man, dear Lord, please save us from this.
She's
That's
like,
crazy.
She's like, don't let the devil get into this room.
On this
And-
sacred day, you guys are going to fight and get into an altercation. I can't believe this.
And
This
I
is
was like,
blasphemy.
I gotta get out of here. So I did my due diligence as a citizen and voted, and it made me concerned though about the integrity of our elections.
It's crazy you say that too, that you walked in, because like I said, this is my first time ever voting. I was fully expecting like, all right, I'm going to be in line for like an hour, and that's cool. Like I blocked out a part of my day. In fact, I was almost counting on it because there was this meeting that I didn't want to go to, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll use this just like, oh man, I had to vote. Sorry, I was waiting in line, so I couldn't make it. And I walked right up, and I waited for like 2 seconds, not even. I walked right up to the table. There was one person in front of me. I was like, oh yeah, and my name's Lucas Durazio. They're like, all right, you're over there. Fill this out and turn it in. I was like, man, what's all the big hubbub about? I guess Pennsylvania does have the most mail-in ballots of anywhere else in the country this year. So maybe that's part of it, that there was a lot of mail-ins and not as many people going physically. But either way, election day's over with. The political talk is over with. We can get down to sports.
Democracy is dead.
And democracy is dead. That's Tom's hot take of the day.
No, I'm kidding. We're all fine.
Yeah, it'll be all right.
We're still number one out here, no matter what happens.
As bleak as things may seem, no matter what. I always heard it's never as good as you think, and it's never as bad as you think. Either way, that's what I always heard in sports and in a lot of other things. But I try to remember that whenever I think something's going really good or something's going really bad. Keep yourself grounded. Anyways, something that's going really bad, Dom, that it might be as bad as it seems, is the Browns season. Another devastating loss this week to the Chargers. Jameis Winston doesn't look great. Nothing really goes right for them. Big loss, down 20-3 at halftime. Couldn't tell you what the final score was because I stopped watching. Trades Zadarius Smith this week. The fire sale, it seems like, has started. And it seems like it's just about time for Cleveland to start looking at the Cavs, who are 9-0, which is great. But right now, talking about the Browns, doesn't look great. What do you think? Any thoughts on the brown and orange?
I mean, Lucas, you've been saying it since episode 1 of Behind Enemy Lines. This isn't their year. It hasn't been their year for a while. It's just a tough situation that they're in. I think you just got to come back next year and hope you can put some more pieces together.
So right now, they've got what week is it? 9, 10, something like that? They've got about 8 games left, I believe. So must
we're going into week 10. Yep.
That's right. So they have 8 games left. Jameis Winston's looked decent, whatever. But at the same time, we're not making the playoffs. That's the bottom line. We're 2-7. Do you play? The only question, the only debate, really, other than once we look forward to next year and talk about what Deshaun Watson's future is, really the only debate is, do you play Dorian Thompson-Robinson at some point this year? He's the second-year quarterback out of UCLA. Jameis Winston's a veteran at this point. I believe he's only on a 1-year contract, so we'll have to decide whether or not to bring him back. But do you play this guy who you've kind of had like a project around? You've played him. He played some last year, but it's always good to get as many live game reps as you can and just determine, like, all right, this guy at some point could maybe be a starter for us, or he's going to be a backup. He can be a solid backup and whatever, or we'll just move on from him. Those are pretty much your 3 options. So at what point do you think, from an outsider's perspective, do you think that takes place?
That's a great question, because Jameis Winston was the AFC Player of the Week that first week he started, but you bring up good points with wanting to get DTR some live reps and starting to figure it out before, maybe he moves on or he's out of the league. So yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a tough one. You got the options there, but right now, like you said, what do you really have to prove? This is more about like figuring stuff out at this point. So
that's right.
As much as I love Jameis, as much as I find him to be super entertaining, I think you need to start thinking about the future, because you need options next season when Deshaun might not be there. And if you have another tough decisions to make, if you're seeing what Deshaun Watson's doing and he's struggling like he did early in this season, then you have a much easier fallback on DTR if you know that he is a viable option at quarterback.
That's right. And like I said, there's 8 games left. My dad, I talked to him on the phone last night. He said, even if it's 4 games for Jameis, let him keep playing, try to do as much as he can with this team. And, obviously there's a slight glimmer of hope. It's very, very bleak. There's very little chance of them making the playoffs, but they're not mathematically eliminated yet. So, maybe let him play 4 more, and then, let DTR play the last 4 at that point if and when you're out of the playoffs. But that's kind of really for this year. That's the only debate. The only question that's up in the air is whether or not you give this young guy some opportunity and some experience.
Yeah.
On the other hand, they, like I said, traded away Zadarius Smith. Who else do you trade on this team? Is there anyone else that you look at, again, from an outsider's perspective, because it's easy to have to be a Browns fan and be from Cleveland and be like, well, we can't get rid of Myles Garrett, we can't get rid of Denzel Ward, we can't get rid of Nick Chubb, like so and so, because we love him so much. From an outsider perspective, a Steelers fan, is there anyone that you think like they should be targeting in the trade market, that they should send for some draft picks and things like that?
I'm just trying to think of like who has real value where you could get a return that's actually meaningful in the future.
Obviously, Myles Garrett. I mean, that's like the big question mark. Do you want to stick by him? He's still in his prime, I would say, but nearing the end of it. And, just statistically at his age and for how long he's been in the league, the decline might start soon. So the question is, do you get something out of him while you can?
I guess. But what do you think the most that you could get for him is? Do you think someone would pay a first-round pick?
I don't see why not. I mean, he's valued as one of the best. I mean, he was the defensive player of the year last year.
Yeah.
He's valued as one of the best defensive players in the league and top 5, if not top 2, not 2 at edge rusher.
But
of course,
these teams know that the Browns are leveraged in this way, they know they don't really have any options. They could probably get him for second and fifth round pick, maybe. I don't see anybody buying him for a first round pick if they know that the Browns are desperate to get more pieces.
Well, my thing is, he's still a top tier guy. I mean, like I said, he's defensive player of the year. Whether or not, there's 31 teams in the league. All 31 of them would make their team better by having Myles Garrett. There's no one in the league, I don't care who they have, who wouldn't start Myles Garrett if he was on their roster. So I think one of those 31 teams who's ready to win now would say, yeah, we'll give up a first-round pick to have this guy who's going to be a huge edge-rushing presence and what's the weapon? That was the word I was looking for. Off the edge. Like, we're a team that's built to win now. We'll give up a first-rounder.
I guess.
And I just think 31 teams.
I think first-round picks are just so valuable, especially, like you're saying you're going all in and stuff. And maybe if you know that you're that close, but I don't know how many teams think they're that close where they would give up a first-round pick to get him.
I think there's enough to where there's teams that want to win right now, and they think we can win right now and get a Super Bowl, and then who cares what happens for the next 5 years because we have a Super Bowl. Obviously, you still want to win it as many times as you can and go on, but he is still in his prime. He has years left in the tank. Like, why can't he play now, win them a Super Bowl now, and then play for them for another 5 years and be at an elite level?
I'm trying to think of teams who would do that, though. I don't see the Chiefs giving up their first-round pick. I don't see the Lions doing that. I don't see the Ravens doing that. Definitely not. And then outside of that, there's only a few teams who are really in this all-in mode. I think those are the big 3 right now who could be,
what about
they're the favorites. Eagles maybe, but I don't know if their issues are with the pass rush right now.
See, I was thinking that as well, but at the same time, I don't think it's a team that has an issue with a pass rush. It's not going to be a team who's like, man, we're getting no pressure whatsoever, but rather a team that's like, all right, we play aggressively. We're like defensively, we're an aggressive team, and we want to get better defensively. Not a team we're trying to save ourselves defensively or pass rush. We want to get better because that's what he's going to. Like I said, there's not a team in the league who adds Myles Garrett and then doesn't play.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
Especially at defensive end, because it's not as much. I mean, there is thinking involved in it. Don't get me wrong. I played defensive end in college for 3-4 years, but it's a physical position. Like, he can go in and play day one. Even if he gets traded on a Friday, he can play Sunday. It's not like receiver, running. I mean, even running back, not as much, or quarterback though. Or a DB or linebacker where he has to learn the entire playbook. Like, he's a plug-and-play guy, obviously, at that position.
So you asked me earlier, though, like other players who, like, just from an outside perspective, who I think that they could trade. I would have said Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, but he's on the IR, so I don't think he's eligible to be traded. Would that be someone who do you think the Browns could get value for?
that's a guy who, again, I definitely think they could get value for. You watch the tape, he's one of the best linebackers in the league. They definitely can get value for him. He's still young. The only thing is he is still young, and he is so good that he may be a piece that's too valuable that they plan on building around. 216-859-8699. Let us know anyone else that you think the Browns maybe could get some value for. Trade deadline coming up. What do you think the Browns should do with their future?
WSRR, Cleveland's home of
Hey.
Rebel Radio.
Wait, oh, that was close.
Yep.
Welcome back to Behind Enemy Lines on WSRR Radio. Not the last, there's two more segments. The next segment of the show is brought to you by Synergy Music Studio, based out of Chicago. Synergy Music Studio offers a diverse array of musical services specifically crafted to meet our clients' needs. From recording to mixing and production, discover how they can bring your vision to life at synergymusicstudio.com. You don't even need to be in Chicago, by the way. You can send in your things, get them mixed, mastered by Synergy Music Studio, and have them send it back to you. Dom, we just talked about Chicago. Maybe I should have used our Pittsburgh sponsor for this, but now we're going to talk a little bit of Pittsburgh Steelers. We talked about the trade deadline, talked about how the Browns maybe made the opposite type of moves of the Steelers, where they're sending people away for more picks. Steelers did the opposite, bringing in two huge names for both their offense and defense. Mike Williams, the receiver, and Preston Smith, defensive end, outside linebacker from the Packers.
Yeah, defensive end, edge rusher, I'd say.
So my question with Preston Smith, where does he fit in? Does Alex Highsmith now go to the bench? Does Preston Smith start? Is he rotating in? Because really, obviously, they have T.J. Watt. He's not going to sit out. Or is Preston Smith going to rotate for both of them, give them a little bit of a blow? I don't think T.J. Watt's a guy who needs a blow because he goes 100% on every play. He's clearly in great condition. He's never stopped going 100% at all times. High motor guy. So where does he fit into this defense?
That's a great question because, they do have T.J. Watt, the best outside linebacker in the league. Alex Highsmith, another fantastic player, but then we also got this guy Nick Herbig, who he's been playing
in for Alex Highsmith this year and has played spectacular.
Exactly. So this wasn't an area where I thought the Steelers needed any more depth. I thought they had the best outside linebacker. I thought they had the best outside linebacker duo, and I thought they had the deepest outside linebacker room in the league. And then you add this edge rusher, Preston Smith, who definitely plays a different type of ball than the outside linebackers that we have, who more speed, more finesse. Preston Smith is a big dude. I think he's going to be more of a run stopper for this team. I don't know where exactly he's going to fit, but you said TJ Watt, and he does have a super high motor, but I think with that high motor comes he misses plays, especially towards the end of the game. He's in there all the first half. Once you get into the third, fourth quarter, there are definitely multiple plays where you're like, where's TJ Watt? Why is he not in here? This is a super important part of the game. So I think maybe they're just going to try to preserve him a little bit longer. He's had a decent amount of injuries in his career. I think they're just trying to keep these guys as healthy as possible, not trying to burn them out because they know they're in a great position to make the playoffs. And
I was going to say, you mentioned a couple episodes ago, like the position that they're in, they're 6-2, right? They're in a great position for the playoffs. Their percentage of making the playoffs is pretty high. Do you rotate these three elite pass rushers pretty much that you have now and extend their season in their legs and have them be more fresh? I think that's really the biggest part of this. And a couple weeks ago, we also talked about running back by committee. And I kind of mentioned, there's not as many workhorse guys, and running back by committee might actually extend some of these people's career. And I feel like that's kind of what they're trying to do with TJ Watt. Maybe not for his whole career, but at least for this season, because you mentioned last week the gauntlet for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Pennsylvania Steelers. For the Pittsburgh Steelers is kind of starting,
right.
Especially starting this week with the Commanders. I think this is going to be a really huge stretch for them, and I think it's going to be huge to get through it and get through it healthy. So I think that is going to help a lot.
Yeah. Man, so we're doing a remote episode right now, and Lucas is giving me emotes on the screen right
I'm
now.
not even touching my phone. I don't know how that's going on, but I'm giving Dom some thumbs up. I thought you were giving me thumbs up.
Yeah, I didn't know what was
that's a
happening there
great
for a
take.
second. I can't
I
even.
thought you were
get
giving
it.
me that's a good take. That's why I thought you were thumbs upping me through FaceTime.
Gave him a little emote.
I was like, oh, thanks, Dom. I appreciate that.
So I got distracted there. I'm sorry. What was the question? Was there a question?
I don't even think so. But I was just saying, T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith are going to get fresh legs.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to be Mike Williams' impact for this team on the offensive side?
That's the real question. This Preston Smith move, it doesn't, it's great to have a really solid player added to this defense, but the issue all offseason, as soon as you trade Deontay Johnson, was who's going to step in, who's going to fill this void, because George Pickens can't do it all. And they signed Van Jefferson, they signed Scotty Miller, they got Calvin Austin, but none of these guys have really filled the role that they need him to. And Mike Williams definitely hasn't lived up to his potential in New York. Before he tore his ACL, when he was with the Chargers, he was a fantastic wide receiver. Him and Keenan Allen were one of the two best wide receivers in the league. I still think there's a little bit of juice left in his tank. That there's a decent recovery period after you tear your ACL, and I think he's still coming out of that. He's still not 100%. So I think he's starting to get to that point, and I just hope that he'll be able to get back just close to that point that he was at just 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, and I think that the Steelers have a lot of guys who can be good weapons. George Pickens is obviously a wide receiver one. And like you said, he can't do it all by himself, though. Calvin Austin, really fast, speedy guy. You see him on punt return. He had a punt return touchdown a week or two ago, which is a huge play. He's a really good, gadget athlete guy, but he's not a wide receiver one. I think Mike Williams is another guy you can put on the outside who's a veteran. He has that veteran presence. I also think it's going to help with George Pickens a lot. Like you mentioned, too, when the Bills traded for Amari Cooper, you didn't think it was really because they're going to throw 10 balls to Amari Cooper each game, but it's going to open up Keon Coleman. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of a similar thing in Pittsburgh right now for George Pickens. I think even though, like you said, Mike Williams has not been what he's been in the past this year, I think that's going to open it up a little bit more. Like, all right, they've got a veteran guy on the other side who isn't some schlub. He's not a bum. We're going to have to commit some guys to him, and that's going to open up more for Pickens.
I think that with Pickens, it worked these last 2 weeks with Russ kind of just throwing the ball up to him and Pickens bailing him out in a lot of situations, but I think eventually that will stop working, especially once you go up against these great teams that's coming up. You've got some great defenses where Pickens, he's a really good player, but he's not a Justin Jefferson type of guy where he can take over a game, or CeeDee Lamb where you can throw the ball to him every single time and you'll have a high likelihood of success. I just don't think Pickens is at that point in his career. Maybe he never will get to that point. But with Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin, this was going to end soon. They weren't going to be able to keep up this offensive production. So I think Mike Williams, you get a little bit of unpredictability here. I think it's going to carry into the postseason. I really hope that he gets things figured out, because so far this season, he has been limited to under 70 yards a game, which, isn't awful, but his best performance came against the Broncos in week 3. He had 4 catches, 67 yards. Not great. Second best performance beyond that was in week 2, 3 catches, 34 yards. And since then, he's kind of seen his role be diminished, especially with the Jets adding Davante Adams. So these last few weeks, I don't think it's been fair to assess his performance ever since they added Davante. But you look at his seasons he's had before. 2021 wasn't too long ago. He had 76 catches, 1,100 yards, 9 touchdowns. That is a fantastic NFL wide receiver there. If he can even get to half that, I'll be tremendously excited for him.
But that was before this ACL injury, this most recent injury that he's come off of. He also has a lot of other injuries that he's had in his career. I mean, he's missed extended periods of time multiple times in his career. Yeah. But I do think that for the Steelers, it's just going to give them another look that defenses haven't seen, which is is huge at this point in the year. And I really think that's one thing that's helped the Steelers overall is that they had Justin Fields in there. He kind of gives a look that people hadn't seen. It seemed like the way he was playing from week 1 to week 4 were a lot different. Then they switched quarterbacks. It seems like, again, they kind of switched the way that they've run the offense. Russ runs it a little bit different than Justin Fields. Now they're adding a new receiver. It's almost like their offense isn't the greatest, but they have a really good defense, and they're mixing up what they're showing on offense. So it makes it just harder and harder to defend. So I'm not sure how you feel about that, and if you think that can stay going. But they've given a lot of different looks this year, correct?
Yeah, you got to stay unpredictable. I'm liking what I've seen from Arthur Smith so far this year. It's night and day compared to last season. I don't think it's on the level that Steelers fans want it to be quite yet, but they know that they're not seeing the same thing every week. It's not as predictable as it used to be. I could watch these games on TV last year, and I could tell you every single time if they're going to run or pass the ball, just based on the formation that they're going in. And this year, I mean, there's some times where it's predictable, but compared to last season, every week there's something different. It's not the same guys having to bail the team out every single week. So it's been refreshing for sure.
Dom, you mentioned before we started recording another team that has made some big moves in the, especially just recently, but also before the trade deadline, the Saints. You kind of mentioned first 2 weeks, they looked like they were going to be one of the best teams in the league. They beat the Panthers 47-10. Of course, it's the Panthers, but the Panthers made some moves this year. You thought maybe they were going to be a little bit improved. Then they go out against the Cowboys again, 44 points to 19 against the Cowboys. Since then, they haven't won a game after a 2-0 start. 2-7 now. Fire their head coach. Trade away Marshawn Lattimore. What happened to this Saints team? I'm not really sure, but new head coach could mix it up here. Is there anything to look forward for them for the rest of the year? You kind of mentioned they might be one of the worst teams in the league right now, if not the worst.
Yeah, I mean, after those first 2 weeks, I thought they were a Super Bowl contender. The way that they were demolishing these teams.
I thought they were going to be the sleeper of the league and end up being a team to look out for.
Derek Carr looked like MVP caliber these first 2 weeks. He was unstoppable. And now, every single week, wheels just continue to fall off this team. This past week, I think the final nail in the coffin was Derek Carr throwing the ball up to Olave, basically taking the dude's head off. He gets carted out of there. Luckily, he's okay. But that's your number one guy. That's the guy that you need to protect. And every single week, Olave is going out there and basically dying on the field because Derek Carr doesn't care about his players, or he's just not seeing that he's leading them into danger. I think Derek Carr...
He's getting a lot of hospital passes.
Yeah, I think Derek Carr is a big issue with this team. I don't think he's that type of guy. I don't think he'll ever be able to lead a team to a Super Bowl. But I do think the biggest issue was Dennis Allen, their head coach, who they just fired. There's always been some weird vibes behind this guy. He's had weird relationships with his players. I think he was head coach for way too long there. There was signs of hope early in the season with Clint Kubiak being their offensive coordinator, but all that hope is gone because I think the team has given up on themselves. I think it's over for the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, you trade away your franchise guy at corner, Marshawn Lattimore. You fire your head coach. You have guys on your own team, your defensive linemen seem to come out and be talking about they're apologizing to the city, which is nice to see, but it's halfway through the season. And they're saying, yeah, we're sorry that we've been so atrocious pretty much over the last 7 weeks. And it's something that as a Browns fan, I can kind of relate to it and see and be like, man, that's a tough situation to be in. And I know it all too well, but, I don't know how to feel about that pretty much, about one of their defensive linemen pretty much tweeting that they stink and Cam Jordan apologizing to people. The Browns play them in 2 weeks on the 17th, November 17th. Is that 2 weeks? Yeah. And I think that'll be a really, really ugly game to watch for everyone involved.
Probably will be. I got the Browns, though.
It's Jameis's comeback against his old team, the Saints. You got to give him some love and, assume that he's going to pull it together. But yeah,
going back to Go back to Cam Jordan. I don't know what it is. I can't stand the guy. I think it's partially because for some reason when he's tweeting nonsense and, I don't know, just saying dumb stuff that people don't care for some reason. Like, people aren't bothered by the fact that he tweets constantly and says dumb stuff. He was like, here's that tweet you're talking about. He said, we just lost to the Panthers, ... I love y'all, New Orleans. Truly had higher expectations and the best of hope for us. Y'all deserve it. One, if I'm a Saints fan, I'm be like, okay, this guy has given up on the season. He's supposed to be the captain. He's supposed to be the leader. And he's basically waving the white flag like, man, we had high expectations, but this one's a wash this season. We'll be back next year. Like, Cam Jordan, you're 35 years old, basically. You don't have many more opportunities. You're still mathematically in this thing. You're in the worst division in football, and you're already giving up on November 3rd. And then the second part of it is that he's saying we just lost to the Panthers. Like, that's something crazy. They have the same exact record. Like, you're just as pathetic as the Panthers are. There's nothing...
And it's a divisional opponent.
Like, exactly. He just annoys the heck out of me. I can't stand the guy.
On the other side of that, shout out to Bryce Young. Is that his first win as a starter? I feel like there was a lot of, hype around this game being like Bryce Young actually won a game as a starter. And I'm not sure if it's his first, but, good for him. He's obviously went through some struggles being an undersized guy. And obviously not in a good situation that he got drafted to.
He's 3-17 as a starter, but 1-3 this season. Yeah, really bad stuff.
That's a spectacular record for a number 1 overall pick.
Daniel Jones type numbers.
Those are spectacular. I mean, really, you look at it. How many first round picks fizzle out? And obviously, I'd love to look at percentages of quarterbacks drafted in the top 10 or in the top, 16 or even the first round that really make it and are considered, a good draft pick. Because in the end, it is really a gamble, right? I mean, that's what you're doing drafting, correct? It's a calculated gamble. You're doing your study, but at the end of the day, these guys haven't played in the NFL. You don't really know if they're going to be able to make the jump or not, correct?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the only way. Again, sorry to bring it back to the Browns, but this is your Cleveland sports talk show from Pittsburgh, so I kind of have to. That's kind of the way that you kind of have to think about it with Deshaun Watson. It's like we took a chance on him, and at the end of the day, it just didn't work out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of just have to move on from it. Is it time to move on from Bryce Young, or does he still have a chance in the Panthers, in Carolina?
I don't know. That's a great question. That number there was so shocking, that 3-17. And I was curious because I said Daniel Jones right after that. I looked it up. He's 22-36-1 as a starter. Now, I don't know what it was through his first 2 seasons like Bryce Young, but that sounds a whole lot better than 3-17. I also looked up, you said something about like the first round quarterbacks and how many of them are, disappointments. According to Sports Illustrated, 44.4% of first round quarterbacks drafted in quarterback rich classes end up being a disappointment. Those are guys like Mac Jones, Paxton Lynch. And Justin Fields. They were in classes where it was supposed to be quarterback heavy. A lot of teams were supposed to get their franchise quarterback, but they didn't turn out. They didn't turn out to be anything.
And you said that too, like there's 44%. That also, only 44% of first round quarterbacks end up being, did you say 44% of them are a disappointment or are not a disappointment?
Are disappointments.
Are a disappointment. See, that again is a reason that I think that the trade deadline, you can get something good for Myles Garrett, because he is like guys like Myles Garrett, guys who are established in the league. It's like, yeah, that the potential of a first round pick is amazing, but like here's a guy who's proven that he can do it in the league for 5 to 10 years, and I think that's what the Saints look at in Marshawn Lattimore. I'm not sure exactly what they got out of him, but like they trade Marshawn Lattimore, and whoever picked him up, like this is a proven guy. So I think that even though it is such a, like you said, first round picks are so valuable, but it's all just based off potential. You don't really know what you're getting in, and it is just a gamble in the end of the day.
Yeah, it's all just speculation. That's all the NFL draft is. Where if you do get Myles Garrett, there's no speculation with that.
And I mean, that's pretty much what you have to look at. It's like, do you trust your scouting department to pick the right guy, and in the end he works out, or do you trust yourself to say there's a guy over there who is a defensive player of the year, or has been one of the best corners in the game in Marshawn Lattimore since he's come into the league. Now he's at the tail end of his career. He doesn't have quite as much in the tank as a first-round pick might have. But at the same time, even if he gives you 4 years, a first-round pick might be out of the league in 4 years. So it's kind of you're weighing the options of whether or not you want to go out and pick a guy who you think has the potential, or you want to go get a guy who's across the street on a different team to come over and play better for you. 216-859-8699. Let us know what kind of gamble you want to take. First-round pick or a proven guy.
Save money, live better, WSRR.
That's Walmart. That is Walmart.
Could work, though.
Welcome back to Behind Enemy Lines on WSRR Radio. We are brought to you by Hellbender Vinyl. Hellbender is Pittsburgh's first and only custom vinyl record pressing plant. It is one of America's most trusted record pressing plants. It's perfect for local and independent artists, just like the ones we play here at WSRR Radio, who want to take their album release to the next level. Don't settle for a bunch of ones and zeros floating around the internet. Have a physical release with your album with Hellbender Vinyl. Hellbent on quality, hellbent on service. Hellbendervinyl.com. Figure out what you can get from them. Dom, again, you're a vinyl collector. You've checked out Hellbender Vinyl. You still don't know how it works, but we love them because they keep us on the air. And you can do that as well if you go to WSRRadio.com. And I believe there are links to the Venmo there, and we take donations. So please help keep us on the air. We talk about local elections, local radio stations, just as important as local elections, correct?
That's right.
So for this last segment that is brought to you by Hellbender Vinyl, Dom he talked a little bit earlier about Justin Jefferson, talked about he may be one of the best in the league and maybe one of the best of all time. Dom's created a wide receiver tier list for us to argue about, and he's going to tell us what's on his tier list, and I'll react to it as an avid NFL historian. Dom,
that's right.
You're going to start from the bottom, correct?
Yeah, I think that makes most sense, right?
What are our tiers here?
So we've got S through D, S, A, B, C, D.
Okay, yeah,
S
you can start in the bottom, and I'll tell you who you have in the bottom that I think should be higher, because I'm sure there's going to be someone in there that I watched NFL films on that you are going to say that you didn't know who it was, or I might not know who it was, but go on.
Okay, so this is the D tier. First, we've got Jordy Nelson. Pretty good wide receiver, but he's not on the same category as these guys that we'll get to. Next, we've got Wes Welker, who, again, really good receiver with Tom Brady, but I just don't think he's on the same level. And we've got Andre Reed from the Bills. Didn't really get
spectacular.
Didn't get really to see him too much. I think I might need to, look at some tape there. But right now, he's on the D list.
Andre Reed was one of those guys on the Bills who went to 4 Super Bowls and didn't win a single one, so that kind of hurts him. I'll keep him down on that D tier. I think he was on those teams.
He might get to a C, because we'll get to the C in a little bit, but there's some guys that are comparable here. But here's the next one who I was really debating between D and C, and I think you're going to think he's a C, maybe even a B guy, and that is A.J. Green.
A.J. Green? No, I think D works. I think that he was with the Bengals. They were never great. He was really good, but at the same time, how good was he really, or how was he really just one of their only options? Which I think for most of his years, he really was pretty much their only option, right? I don't think there's no one else who jumps out to me as, the Bengals were sweet. Like, P.J. Houshmandzadeh was before him. Mohamed Sanu, of course, is elite. As we know, that on this show, we're huge Mohamed Sanu backers. He's going to be in the S tier, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, of course he is. I was waiting for him to come up in this conversation. But, I don't know. You said D tier?
Yeah.
I mean, these are all time guys. I don't know if AJ Green is a Hall of Famer. So I would say D tier is okay for him.
Yeah, that was just a great era of football.
Yeah, definitely. The best, almost, some would say.
Yeah. Next one I got here, Julian Edelman. I don't think he would be on this tier list at all if he didn't play with Tom Brady, if he didn't have some amazing catches in the Super Bowl. I give him a lot of credit. He was a great player. But, again, I don't think he'd be in the same position if he wasn't drafted to the greatest dynasty of all time.
Yeah, I'm starting to think maybe we should have went the opposite way, started at the top, because it is tough to say whether or not he should be in D tier, because I don't know who's in C. Because obviously these are all still all-time receivers. It's not like we have Greg Little and Muhammad Massaquoi on here. Like those are lower tiers that we're not even getting into. So right now I'll agree, but once I hear someone in the C tier, I might go, no, Julian Edelman was better than him.
Okay. Then we got Lance Allworth, who played a long time ago. I don't think he'd be
Chargers, correct?
Yeah. I don't think he would be able to even be in the same locker room with guys like Justin Jefferson. So I said Lance Allworth, and then Steve Largent. There's another guy who just played a long time ago. Maybe he would have been good, but I just have a hard time believing it.
Old Seahawks player. I don't know. He had some NFL records at some point though. But again, that was the '80s. Obviously, passing is not as at that point was not quite to where it is today. He's another guy who I may have some words to say about once you move up the C.
Okay. That about wraps it up for the D tier. There were two Packers players. It was either Donald Driver or what was it? I can't remember his name exactly, but they're D tier. There's never been a Packers wide receiver who's above that. So anyways, C tier here.
Devontae Adams.
Oh,
he would be above. Is he not in this list?
He's not in this list, but I'd put him on.
This is just a list, a tier list that Dom found on the internet. So there's some players missing from it. But
these are all retired players.
Okay.
C tier. I'm just gonna start off Hines Ward. He could easily be a D tier.
See that's such a homer pick. Putting Hines Ward in the C tier instead of D. He was a Steeler.
Not just because he was a Steeler. He was a really, really good wide receiver.
Hines Ward one year was voted as one of the dirtiest players. I think the dirtiest player in the league. He was voted as one year.
I believe it.
But also Troy Polamalu was voted that one year. So I don't know how much. I don't think Troy Polamalu was a dirty player at all. I mean, he was really, really good and he hit really hard, but that doesn't make him a dirty player.
Yeah. I don't necessarily disagree with the Hines Ward dirty player. There's some hits when he laid on Ed Reed. Next guy I got here, I'll just get the Steelers out of the way here. Lynn Swann, John Stallworth. They played for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 1970s. These were the two guys who I was going to compare with Andre Reed, except the difference with these two guys is they won all four of those Super Bowls. They're Hall of Famers. They made,
but that doesn't make them a great receiver that they won a Super Bowl.
You're right.
Darius Toney won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs.
John Stallworth was the leading receiver for the Steelers for decades. From the 70s to the 2000s, he was their leading receiver.
Who was the guy with the Seahawks again that I forgot? Number 80. What's his? Largent? Steve Largent's better than one of them. I don't know if he's. I don't know. I would put Largent in the C tier if we're just throwing Steelers in there.
I'm cool with that.
The fact that no Steelers are in your D tier says a lot to me.
I'll swap Largent and Ward. How about that?
All right, yeah,
I'm fine with that.
I can take. Largent was doing it without gloves too. That's another.
That's true.
Thing
that is true.
It may sound like that's such a stupid excuse, but if you ever put on an NFL pair of receiver gloves, you see there's a lot of tackiness on those.
They're sticky.
Yeah.
Next player
they're getting new ones like every drive too. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. Next player who I was tempted to put in B tier, but the guys in B were just a little too good, is Anquan Boldin.
Oh, I loved Anquan Boldin. I think C's perfect for him. He's a guy who longevity was really good for him. And he was really good with the Cardinals, and then he was also really good with the Ravens later in his career. So I love Anquan Boldin, but I think C's a good spot for him.
Another similar guy, Steve Smith. I think he's a C tier guy. Really good, maybe close to B tier, but longevity definitely helped his career out.
Yeah. I think that's a good spot for him.
And the last guy I got on C tier is Tim Brown from the Raiders.
Tim Brown was very, very good. Again, I'll have to hear the C tier, but that's a guy I'll have to keep in mind because he may belong in the B tier. I'll have to hear the B tier because after I've heard the C,
Yep.
I might have to bump Tim back up into the B.
And then the last one on the C tier, Steve Largent. We bumped him up. We bumped Hines Ward down. So now we're on to the B tier.
I love that Steve Largent made it.
B tier is where things might get a little controversial.
Also, Julian Edelman maybe belongs in C now that I've heard them all. But go on.
I can't do that one. B tier, first one I got here, Andre Johnson. Andre Johnson was one of the best receivers in the 2010s.
Yeah, he led the league in receiving 2 years in a row, I believe.
With like Matt Schaub as his quarterback.
Yes, exactly. And now he's another guy with those Texans teams where it's like, I kind of said it for AJ Green, like he was really, really good, obviously, but he was their only really good player. So is that why he was getting so many targets? But he could have played anywhere at the height of his career, and maybe not led the league in receiving yards, but been in the top in the conversation for it.
Yeah,
so
and
I
at one
definitely
point,
like him.
At one point, he was teammates with the best running back in the league in Arian Foster for a season or two.
Yeah,
AJ Green never had that type of running back. Next guy I got, though, Michael Irvin from the Cowboys. The numbers speak for themselves. That was a dynasty that the Cowboys had. He was the number one guy, and he is kind
Michael
of the
Irvin,
definition.
absolute coke fiend.
He was, but that helped on the field, it seemed, because that guy was an animal. The numbers he put up were pretty remarkable. Next thing I got is Reggie Wayne. Reggie Wayne is a B tier. He could be bumped to C tier. I was close with that one because I don't know if he's quite in the same category as Andre Johnson, Michael Irvin, and the last guy I have here.
Yeah,
is Chris
I would
Carter.
have to say I love Reggie Wayne. I think Chris Carter's right there. I love Reggie Wayne, but I think he would probably go C tier. Won a Super Bowl with the Colts. But I don't know if he's 2 tiers better than Julian Edelman. That's my reason for bumping him down to C. Like comparing him to Julian Edelman, I don't know. That is a tough one, but I would put Reggie Wayne there. I think Reggie Wayne may have been a D3 guy, but maybe I'm thinking of. I know I'm Pierre Garçon, but I don't remember now. I'm out of whack. I don't know if he belongs 2 tiers above Julian Edelman.
Yeah,
that's my final argument for him.
But I think if
Reggie Wayne went to Miami, what am I thinking?
I think if you have the option to have Reggie Wayne or Julian Edelman, you take Wayne 10 times out of 10.
I don't know about that. I don't know about 10 times. I'd say 8.
Really?
I don't know why. I don't know what those 2 times why my decision would change. But maybe if he's in the slot, I'd take Julian Edelman.
Maybe if he's got Tom Brady as his quarterback.
That's right, maybe. But he had Peyton Manning, so I mean it's not like he had Matt Schaub throwing to him. You know,
right.
He still had a pretty good arm back there.
Now another guy who was getting the ball from Peyton Manning, he's in my A tier, Marvin Harrison.
Marvin Harrison's an A tier guy, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He was spectacular. Again, another guy that led the league in receiving yards, at least once.
Oh yeah.
Right. I believe at one point he had a record for, I think, most yards, or maybe it was most receptions. I forget. But yeah, he's definitely a top tier. He's finished his career with 1,102 receptions, which was second only to Jerry Rice at that time.
Wow.
Michael Thomas broke it in 2019. Right. Wow.
13 seasons for the Colts, 128 touchdowns, 8 Pro Bowls, 1 Super Bowl, and a Hall of Famer. That's an A-tier wide receiver.
Him and Peyton Manning set an NFL record for most completions, yards, and touchdowns by a quarterback-wide receiver duo. With 253 passes, 12,766 yards, and 112 touchdowns. 112 touchdowns, that's crazy.
That is nuts. Those guys
that puts you A tier.
We're on a different level. Another guy, Terrell Owens, A tier.
T.O. I think almost underrated. He's a guy who his his off the field antics sometimes like outweigh people. That's the first thing people think of, rather than the fact that he was a stud receiver. Played in a Super Bowl with a broken leg and had, it's not like he was just out there and had one catch. Like, he had good stats.
Yeah.
With the Eagles.
He was
you
good
can
wherever
go to
he
the
went.
next one. We only got a couple minutes, so.
Okay. Julio Jones, A tier.
Julio Jones, A tier.
Do you
Yeah.
think he's S tier?
He can make an argument for S, but I want to hear who's in S first.
Last A tier guy, Larry Fitzgerald.
Yes. The longevity, he has more tackles than he has drops in his career. Yeah. 100%.
I'm sorry, the last A tier, Antonio Brown. I got to put him in here. He wasn't on this list that I found on the internet, but he's retired. He's an A tier guy.
He may be an S tier guy, honestly.
Oh, I like that.
Just because of the height of his career. And I know you'll love it because he was a Steeler, but
he was the best.
He probably, if he didn't go insane and have applesauce brain at the end of his career, he might have been even better, and he might be a clear-cut S tier guy.
Mm-hmm. So last three here.
If it weren't
in the
for
S tier.
Vontez Perfect.
Yeah, honestly. Last tier, S tier, the greatest wide receiver of all time, Jerry Rice. The numbers speak for themselves. He's the Wayne Gretzky of wide receivers. Stats that will never get touched in a million years. Another guy, Randy Moss, S tier.
Yeah.
And then the last one I have here is Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, 100%. And this is, okay. Now the question is, does Julio belong up there? Which is an interesting question, because Calvin Johnson is kind of his best comparable, but at the same time, he doesn't have I don't know. That would be tough.
It's close.
Do you think he could get the bump or no?
If AB is an S tier, oh man. Nah.
If AB's up there, Julio definitely is.
Really? I
think
I was biased, but I always thought that AB was a superior wide receiver, especially because of his size. He didn't have the gifts that Julio Jones had.
That is true, but at the same time, that doesn't mean he's a better receiver. He might mean he's more skillful. He has better route running or something like that. But you do take the fact that he's taller and things into effect, whether or not you want him on your team. So whether or not he's a better receiver.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right.
Like if you say, oh man, well, a shorter guy, he had, he runs better routes or he has better hands or something like that. But like, I'm just as good of a receiver as him, but he's faster and taller and can jump higher than me. Like, well, then you're not as good of a receiver.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's fair.
So I think you have to take that into account. 216-859-8699. Let us know what you think we got right and wrong on our tier list. Thanks for joining us this week. A little bit of a perseverance episode. One more?
Monday night.
Oh, my God. We're forgetting again. Monday night this week, Dolphins and Rams. You got any lines for us, Tom?
Yeah, the Rams are 1-point favorites. It's basically a pick 'em over under 50.5. I'm going to take the Rams. Yeah.
I'm taking the Rams every time, the over under. I'll take the over on 50.5 though. Tua's healthy now. He's looked confident, but the Rams are still winning that game.
It's a lot of points. I'll take the under there.
All right, very interesting. We'll look back. Let's see. Wait, did we ever Bucks Chiefs? What was the spread last week? It was 8, right?
Yes. It was like 8.5.
Yeah, the Bucks lost by 6. I took the
Covered.
Bucks spread plus 8.5. Dom, you owe me a Butterfinger. Thanks for joining us this week on Behind Enemy Lines. 216-859-8699 is the number to text or call. Let us know what you want to hear next week on Behind Enemy Lines right here on WSRR Radio.
The preceding program is a StylesRebelRadio.com production.